Welcome to the Respectful Divorce Podcast. If you're considering a divorce, it's important to know that you have options for how you divorce. On the Respectful Divorce Podcast, we explore those options and provide advice from divorce professionals. I'm your host, Tim Crouch, and today we're talking with members of the Collaborative Law Institute of Minnesota. Joining us today are collaborative divorce attorney Megan Yates, Deb Clemmensen, a child and family specialist, and Kimberley Miller, a collaborative divorce attorney, certified divorce financial analyst, and even a marriage and family therapist. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Happy to be here.
So Kimberley, you're basically a collaborative divorce team by yourself. You wear a lot of hats. Tell us about how that came to be such a big part of your practice, that you're doing all of these kinds of things.
Yeah, I started my career as an attorney, not knowing much about the collaborative practice itself. And about 20 years ago, discovered the collaborative process and practice and shifted my work into that. And the marriage and family therapist piece came about because, as we'll probably talk about, oftentimes divorce feels a lot more emotional and relational than it does legal. And so it felt like I was going to take one class on marriage and family therapy or marriage dynamics, and it turned into a degree. And then again, the financial side is really huge. It's emotional, familial, relational, financial, and legal. And so it felt like some expertise that allowed me to expand my services, certainly, but also just the ability to provide the absolute best service in any role to clients.
Does it ever get confusing as to which hat you're wearing?
No, we're pretty good at identifying roles really clearly. And I will say I have shifted now in the last year or so to really just be doing the neutral work as a financial neutral. So that's the main role that I play now. Although I've worked with these wonderful women in all sorts of roles in the past on other cases.
So, Megan, let me just kind of ask you, the divorce process, the traditional divorce process in Minnesota, not the collaborative process, but the traditional process, what is it like to go through a divorce in Minnesota?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. I'll be honest in the sense that I personally have not practiced in that traditional role. I started my practice right out of law school, working with Ron Oski in a very just out-of-court centered practice. And so I have personal experience with mediation, collaborative divorce, and kind of some other unbundled work. So I will tell you what I know from a knowledge standpoint, not necessarily a personal experience standpoint. I don't know, Kimberley, if you've done any traditional work, you can certainly jump in as well. But in Minnesota, typically a divorce would start, if we're looking at the traditional process, with both spouses hiring divorce lawyers, usually not a coordinated effort by any means in terms of finding professionals who have stylistic similarities or approaches. It's kind of most of the time, probably who your friend or neighbor worked with. And then typically will be a summons and petition, which are the documents that start the divorce process in Minnesota. Sometimes those are filed with the court. Sometimes they're not. If they are, your case is assigned to a judicial officer, and you'd have an initial court hearing to kind of plan out how the case will progress and what the plan is for settlement. And then you're kind of bumped out into kind of attorney-supported mediation. Here in Minnesota, that's often with former judicial officers who have since retired from the bench and do a lot of that neutral work. And it's usually done through caucusing. So, one attorney negotiating on their behalf or their client's behalf, in kind of one physical room or virtual room, depending on the format of the meeting, and then the other attorney and their client in a separate space. And so there's not a lot of, being in a joint session in the same physical or virtual space together and negotiating directly or face-to-face. So it's kind of a lot of attorney-led, attorney-directed negotiations. And then from there, knowledge of it is that it usually will take one or two of those sessions to reach an agreement. I would say that the attorneys that I talk to who do the traditional work often bring in neutrals as well in terms of the parenting side of things. What I'm hearing is that feels maybe a little different than I think how it feels in the collaborative process. Use of neutrals is obviously not something that we have the corner on in the market, but I think we use them differently, and I think we maybe use greater skills, right? They have the opportunity; those neutrals have the opportunity to shine a little bit more and support families in a more holistic way than the traditional process.
And so the collaborative process is different from what you're describing in what way?
Probably several ways. I think I had started the description of the traditional process as attorneys who might not be stylistically similar. And I think that's probably one of the greatest benefits of the collaborative process, particularly with the people who do it in Minnesota. We all are naturally working towards the same goal, but I think we also, attorneys and neutrals all have a similar style and approach to the process that feels very cohesive to clients. Obviously, the way I might describe something is different than Kimberley might describe it or another attorney. Same thing with, the way Deb might describe something from a family specialist standpoint might be different than another family specialist in our community. But the overall style and approach is very similar, and we're quite unified in how we describe our divorce, collaborative divorce, and kind of the sequencing of the case. So I would say that's different. I think the integration, as I had mentioned, of neutrals, the attorneys like to kind of take a step back and really let the neutrals shine with their expertise. As Kimberley mentioned, divorce is partly legal. It's also financial, certainly emotional, and for people who are parents, being set up for successful co-parenting are really important aspects of it. And so, those are things I can help with as an attorney, but those aren't where my expertise lies. And so we really like to kind of step back and let the people who have that expertise, be the most supportive that they can be for the family.
Yeah, and so Deb, you're one of those folks in terms of the work that you do. Talk about the work that you do in a collaborative case.
Well, it's actually not that different than the work I do in a non-collaborative case if the attorneys understand the collaborative model. That what we're trying to do is keep people in a zone of problem solving to prepare them for moving ahead, co-parenting, life with their kids during and after a divorce. And so as a neutral child and family specialist, I always tell my clients the goal is to keep kids at the center and out of the middle. And the goal is to help you begin to practice what it's going to be like to be making decisions and working together on behalf of your kids. And there's 3 work products that we offer. One is preparation to have a conversation with your kids, developmentally appropriate, hitting the notes of safety and respect as much as possible, giving kids grounding. I got into this work as a psychologist because kids were largely silenced back. I've been doing this since around 2000, and kids were largely silenced. And what we do in thinking about these work products, the we statement, the parenting plan, and I'll talk just a bit about a confidential voluntary safety plan, is the focus is not on legal rights. The focus is on the developmental needs of your kids. And making that loop and coming back to it and saying, this is a way to give your kids a voice because they are represented here by someone who's advocating for their best interests in real time as you draft these documents and make these decisions. And the one other thing that neutral child and family specialists can do, which really drew me into the work, was to give kids a literal voice. a child inclusive process. It's very contained and boundaried. It's not therapy light. It's 2 meetings with kids, one to get to know them and invite them to participate so they don't feel overwhelmed or forced at a time when they're already maybe feeling vulnerable. And then a get to work meeting that's designed to help the team learn what's important to kids moving forward so that the parenting plan especially can reflect some of those needs and wants on the part of kids. They're not decision makers, they're stakeholders, but very important. So that in a nutshell is what I do. And again, in Minnesota, there are some non-collaborative attorneys who really get that this should not be battled out in court. And they really want parents to be able to do this mostly themselves with some guidance. In a collaborative case, though, and then I'll stop talking. In a collaborative case, I'm in communication with team members in a different way. It allows us to cross-inform each other, to kind of share information, to course correct if needed, if we can work together in a way that's more productive for a family. That doesn't happen in the same way in a non-collaborative case. And I did say I would talk about the voluntary safety plan. That's to deal with issues where safety could be impaired, chemical health, mental health, sometimes physical health. When parents are co-parenting, if there's anything that rises to the level of concern, then we try to do that in a collaborative container as well.
Sorry, if I could just piggyback on that. With regard to your question, Tim, about the difference between a more traditional litigation family law experience and collaborative, I think the safety plan is a really good example. I think one of the biggest differences is really where the way in which families and parties are approaching negotiation. And I think in traditional litigation, you're doing it from the extremes. It's like, the used car salesman is the easiest. Like, I'm going to want the lowest price. They're going to offer the highest price. We're going to keep whittling away and end up in the middle. Safety plan, one is going to want extreme safety. The other is going to want extreme leniency. And you're going to whittle away and end up in the middle, maybe. And I think collaborative just allows you to change that, to focus the parties on the compromises and what's necessary for the safety of the kids, or to be what's best for them. And it's a paradigm shift that I think just inherently, now there are definitely good traditional attorneys who get it and they recognize that, and it shifts. But for a lot of them, you're in that postured place, and we're shifting negotiation to talk about what matters most to everybody, and then to try to work as a team to reach those resolutions, as opposed to battling just for battling's sake and knowing we're going to land up in the middle.
Yeah. Kimberley, putting your financial professional hat on for a moment, what is your role in the collaborative team as the financial neutral?
I am part of sort of the information gathering and verification steps. So I typically, what might be discovery in another setting as far as gathering information, asking questions, interrogatories, like being really formal. In collaborative, everybody is signing on to a good faith, informal process of gathering all of the financial information. So I work with the clients. Typically, I'm brought in by the team at some point, and I work with the clients to gather all of the financial information. And then typically in our most structured, most common path, I would meet with clients alone in 2 meetings to just go through and verify and start gathering that information. So we're really not utilizing legal time and therefore expense on the client side to do the first step of just gathering and verifying information. And then I typically would facilitate the negotiations when we bring the attorneys in. So then it feels more like a mediation where I'm facilitating conversation, pulling up scenarios, running different options. I can provide that expertise. It's a little more attorney driven once we've got all of the information. And then it's a little more art than science at that point. It's not as structured. After we've gathered the information and started our work together, we adapt as a team to figure out what is going to be most useful for clients, which I also think is an interesting part of just collaborative in general. I think we all do that. I have attorneys who recommend clients go work with the financial neutral first, which is an adaptation of the process to what they need. Or clients who can't think straight unless they work through the parenting issues may put everything else on hold and want to work with someone like Deb to just ease concerns and get some clarity on what might be the most pressing issues to them at that point.
And Megan, one of the parts of the whole collaborative process is the decisions are not made by somebody else; they're made by the couple, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. That's kind of a really important element, specifically when I'm meeting with potential clients in a consultation, to explain to them that it's both a benefit of the process and perhaps it can feel like maybe a hard part too for certain clients, that there's the freedom in deciding, together what's going to work best for their families. And that's, most clients or most potential clients see that as, okay, great, I can maintain some control and autonomy over what's going to happen with my family. Sometimes that can feel overwhelming and also like, gosh, that feels hard. I wish somebody would just tell me what to do. And so, the whole team and collaborative is there to help support if that's the feeling, if the overwhelm, gosh, I don't know what to do. We're really there as a, educator, guidance, support team, so that they're making those decisions in a way that are going to be things that they, feel good about long term, and are going to be kind of sustainable, lasting things. And to know how they got to their agreements is helpful too, so that if things change in the future with parenting, or if income changes and we've got a support review, they understand how they got there, and usually with maybe some extra support can figure out how to adjust as the needs of their families change.
I just mentioned the divorce readiness scale, Megan, because it's really like a tool that we use. Any of the professionals can. And so it's not scientific. It's very subjective, but it's meant to be on a 1 to 10 scale. If 1 was, I wake up in the morning and I can barely breathe, this can't be happening. And 10 was, I'm pretty resolved. I'm ready to do this at any time. I'm maybe have done some emotional work to prepare myself. This can proceed. Where are you today? Each parent. Now, when I work with people, it's in joint meetings usually, and so they can tell each other where they are. Sometimes they parse out logistically, I need more work with Kimberley before I'm ready to do this. But emotionally, I feel prepared. And then we can tell them that is a continually morphing sort of construct. You will find some days you wake up a 5, and by the end of the day, you're a 9. But where you are today will guide the team and how quickly we can work with you on sustainable resolutions. If you're not ready, then we can build in some pieces that will help you feel more grounded, like an individual consultation with someone like Kimberley to learn what this jargon means about all of these financial pieces, or more time with your attorney, because our research has shown it's that trusting relationship, that respectful relationship with attorneys that is really key to people's sense of well-being and satisfaction with the collaborative process. So we need to know that so we can guide you. Now, a court system, they're on a calendar.
Yeah. So the line about how do we get there? How did we get here? How did the collaborative movement get its start in Minnesota? Megan?
Sure. Yeah, I can jump in. So Stu Webb is the original, founder of collaborative law. He had a traditional practice in family law for the pretty sure the majority of his career. I think he only did family law. I should ask him the next time he's bopping around the halls of our office space to be sure of that. But he was just really burnt out from the process and the contentious fighting that he was seeing, among families and his clients, and feeling like he was contributing to that, right, as a player in that process. And so 1990, he decided he was going to write a letter to the Supreme Court Justice of Minnesota or the Chief Justice, and kind of present this option as a resolution path for families going through divorce, seeking kind of some support from the judiciary on that, and just kind of started doing it. Just kind of declared he was a collaborative attorney one day, and it was a very grassroots, very Minnesotan way to go about things. Just kind of recruiting the people that he had worked with in a professional capacity previously, and thought, gosh, they would be good at doing this work as well. And so kind of snowballed from there through the 90s. It seems to have really taken root in a significant way and kind of shot up in terms of participation from professionals and getting the word out kind of toward the late 90s, early 2000s. And that's kind of the time, too, that the Collaborative Law Institute of Minnesota started to kind of solidify as an organization. And, we got together, I came in 08, so maybe Deb could speak to some of the original stuff, but in terms of getting together and creating, protocols around our process and, putting some structure to it so people kind of understood from a professional standpoint, like, how does this work? What are we doing? What's the end game here? And how do we get this out into our communities and have families know that this is a really good option for them?
Yeah. So how did each of you get here? And Megan, I'll let you continue, and then Deb will come to you on that. But how did you end up in the collaborative process?
Yeah. So I had just mentioned I started with Collaborative in 2008. I then was a paralegal working for Ron Oski, who's a collaborative attorney here in the Minneapolis area. I have a background in family social science, so family systems and, the role of families in society has always been something that's interested me. I actually went to graduate school, to be a marriage and family therapist, and decided my skill set was something that was maybe a little more project focused, and I appreciate an end date and a closure. So I decided to go to paralegal school, and then actually my mother is a financial planning client of Amy Wolf, who is was a leading financial neutral here in Minneapolis for many, many years, and now does more aligned financial work. But she was a client of Amy's. Amy's a business partner. This is a long-winded story, but Amy is a business partner of Ron's. I needed a job. Ron needed a full-time paralegal. So that's how I got started. I ended up going to law school in 2015 while still working with Ron, and graduated in 2018. And so I've been practicing with Ron since then. And as I mentioned at the beginning, only doing out-of-court work. So I do mediation, collaborative law, and kind of drafting work. And Ron and I have been partners since 2022.
Yeah. So Deb, how did you end up in the collaborative movement?
Yeah, I was going to dovetail on the kind of milestone moments in the development of the Collaborative Law Institute of Minnesota. And one of them was Stu Webb brought in a team from San Francisco in 2000 to train on something they called collaborative team practice. And I was a mental health professional psychologist working at a nonprofit agency in town, and trying not to be subpoenaed or deposed or be involved in family law. And so I almost threw away this invitation to come to the training, but then I went, and oh my gosh, it was such a better mousetrap. How could neutrals be used proactively in a process that really was focused on support and problem solving rather than adversarial energy? So I quickly signed on to do it. I tried to train a whole bunch of other mental health professionals, and I thought I'm going to just ace myself out of a job, but everyone should know about this. But to my surprise, it wasn't a good fit for everybody. It's sort of, as Kimberly has said so well, it's a paradigm shift after paradigm shift, doing things differently. But the other thing that happened in 2000 was the Minnesota legislature passed parenting plan legislation. And so that opened the door for parents to be legally competent to do their own decision making in the eyes of the court. And that opened a huge door for us to be facilitating the creation of these parenting plans, even if we're not attorneys. So that's how I got in, and that's where I found my joy, and it's kind of my sunset career. So, yeah. And I get to work with the best people.
Yeah. Kimberly, how did you get involved in the collaborative process?
Yeah, mine was an interesting story. So I was out of law school. I was doing actually business law at a large firm in Minneapolis. And I had somebody reached out and needed a divorce attorney, and I didn't do that kind of work. So I did what we typically do, which is send an email to the whole office and said, hey, does anybody have a good family law attorney to set them up with? And the recommendation was a collaborative attorney who I didn't know anything about, but I just called this attorney and said, hey, can you tell me a little bit about this collaborative thing? And we ended up talking for 2.5 hours, and he told me about this, and it sounded interesting. So I then reached out to Ron Oski just to see if he would go to coffee or breakfast. And anyone who knows Ron knows that he set it up within an hour. And the next week we were at coffee, and we also had, an hour coffee that went 2 or 3 hours. But what he said to me was, he said, it's too bad I hadn't met you earlier. Ron or Stu Webb and I are going to Cedar Rapids, Iowa tomorrow to do a training to a group of lawyers there. And if we had known, you could have joined us. And he didn't know me well enough at that point, but I proceeded to clear my calendar. And the next morning, I was in the car with Ron and Stu, who I'd never met before. And I got a 6-hour drive there. I got to do a training for 2 days and then a 6-hour drive back. And by the end of that, I was sold, and I left my firm and started my own practice.
So we're doing this podcast ahead of Divorce with Respect Week, which is coming up March 1st through 8th. And during Divorce with Respect Week, anybody who's interested can talk to a participating collaborative professional for free to learn more about the divorce process. And so I kind of wonder, from each of you, from your perspectives, what does it mean to divorce with respect? Kimberly?
I think it's about holding ourselves to the highest possible standard of kind of who we are and bringing our best selves to a process that often brings out the absolute worst in us. And it's out of fear and worry and sometimes it's that, I was going to say mama bear, but it's like the parent protective, like I'll do whatever I can for my kids. And so I think Divorce with Respect really requires bringing your absolute best self to this process and doing the hardest possible work out there in a way that is different and in a way that you can look back on it and say, I really went through, the hardest thing I ever did in my life, but I did it in the best possible way.
Yeah. Megan, Divorce with Respect?
Yeah, I mean, I echo what Kimberly said, and I think also the added feature or element of maybe honoring the relationship that you did have, because at some point, it was really what felt good for you and our clients, and acknowledging that there's probably majority of the time a number of years that went into that relationship, and especially for people who are parents, that relationship is going to continue just in a slightly different capacity, and setting yourself up by choosing a process that's going to be able to honor what's been put in, and also be able to maintain a respectful co-parenting relationship into the future, and choosing a process, that does all that it can to support that, and kind of that Hippocratic oath of do no harm, but also going beyond that and teaching some skills in ways that are hopefully tools you can use going forward as well.
Yeah. Deb, divorce with respect?
Yeah, I think this has been very eloquently stated by my colleagues. I want to add, I think divorce with respect means treating people with the dignity inherent in being a human. And I often say to my clients, we're all humans on this bus, which means some of us get off at the wrong stop. We do stupid things, things happen. But for us in collaborative, the respect is toward our clients, toward each other, toward the stakeholders, the children, toward our community and what we're doing, and that we try to model for our clients how to have conflict not take over our brains and hijack our amygdalas. How do we do this very hard work, very worthy work in a way that keeps it safe? And so I think there's a lot built into that. And when parents can come through that successfully, I think they feel the worthiness of that. So,
Deb Clemmensen, Megan Yates, and Kimberley Miller, thank you for joining us on the Respectful Divorce podcast today. So if someone would like to reach out to you individually or learn more about you, what's the best way to do that? Deb?
Well, I can give you my phone number and my office presence phone number and my email.
Okay.
So the phone number is 952-767-0190. And my email is deborah.clemmensen@gmail.com. And that's deborah.clemmensen@gmail.com.
All right. Megan, best way to learn more about you and to reach out to you?
Yeah, so my phone number is 952-806-9787. And my email is megan@oski.com. So the most basic spelling of Megan, Megan, and Oski is OUSKY.com. And if you want to learn just more about our practice, and there's some informational videos on our website, which is oski.com.
Right.
I have a website too, www.deborahclemmensen.com. Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
And Kimberley.
It's Kimberley, KIMBERLY at KM for my initials, KMFamilyLaw.com. And it's the same, KMFamilyLaw.com is the website. So there's a lot there. And there is a phone number. It's just email's always better. I'm not good on the phone, but you can call and leave a message. We'll get back to you that way too.
All right. Well, we will put all of that information in the show notes along with a link to the Collaborative Law Institute of Minnesota's website. So that information will be available in the show notes with this podcast. I want to thank you all for watching the Respectful Divorce podcast today. This reminder that Divorce with Respect Week is coming up March 1st through 8th. You can talk with divorce professionals, including attorneys, financial professionals, divorce coaches for free, simply by going to divorcewithrespectweek.com to find a professional near you. Divorce with Respect Week, again, March 1st through 8th, and that website, www.divorcewithrespectweek.com. I'm Tim Crouch for the Respectful Divorce podcast, reminding you that collaborative divorce is a better way to untie the knot.